Before you, Chair, you would have what is termed Exhibit E4. It's a presentation file.
Yes.
Yes, and that presentation file contains two statements of Reverend Chikane. The one statement is at page 1 to 19, and the second statement from pages 21 to 22. His evidence is relevant to the evidence of Mr. Masako, because, Chair, we would recall that Mr. Masako, in his very first statement, which was E1, had indicated at page, I think paragraph 31 of that statement, that after he had gone to the home of the Guptas, he reported that to Reverend Chikane.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. May this this bundle then be admitted as Exhibit E4?
The file containing the statement by Reverend Frank Chikane and annexures thereto will be marked Exhibit E4.
Thank you, Chair. May the witness then be sworn in?
Yes. Please administer the oath.
Please state your full names for the record.
Frank Chikane.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Well, before Ms. Norman starts, Reverend, I just want to thank you for making yourself available and for coming to give evidence and to share with the Commission what you know that's relevant to our terms of reference, and to give your perspectives on some of the issues that are really quite important to the Commission and the country. I particularly appreciate that you have come to give evidence because, as you may know, since last year I have been making appeals to, among others, former directors generals and current directors general to say, please come forward because there must be a lot that you can share with the Commission. And although some have come forward, I have a feeling, rightly or wrongly, that there are many who probably would enrich this Commission with matters that they have knowledge of who have not come forward. So I really appreciate that you were able to come and share what you know with the Commission. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reverend, at page, you will find a presentation file before you, and it has a divider marked 1.1.
Yeah.
Then immediately after that divider, you'll find a statement.
Yeah.
In fact, it's an affidavit. And could you please turn to page 19 of that folder?
Page
19. Yes.
19.
19.
Yeah.
There is a signature there. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Is it correct that you deposed to that on the that affidavit on the 28th of May, 2019?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. And then if you turn over the page, you will find another folder, 1.2.
Yeah.
Under that folder, there is another affidavit, which appears from pages 21 to 22.
Yeah.
Could you please turn to page 22?
I've got it.
Is that your signature that appears on that page?
It is.
Did you depose to that affidavit on the 24th of November, 2017?
That's it.
Thank you. Briefly, Reverend, could you please just tell the chairperson what we deal with in paragraph 1, which is basically your background and your work experience. Then we are going to deal then next with your experience having occupied various offices within various, or serving under various presidents of this country, from President Mandela right up to President Zuma.
Yeah.
Could you then just briefly highlight what do you do, and all the brief synopsis that you've put in of your career and your background in paragraph 1?
Yeah. Thank you. On paragraph 1, since we signed this affidavit, I've become a former. So
Yes.
I'm now former president of the AFM International and former presiding pastor of the church in Naleji. I've handed over to younger leaders.
Yes.
And what is still current is the vice president of the South African Council of Churches, the advisory committee on peace and security of the AACC, and I'm still moderator of the Churches Commission on International Affairs of the WCC. That's what occupies me.
Yes.
For now. It's voluntary activity, all of it.
Yes.
So it's not paid work. In page 2, paragraph 2, indicates the history of my work within government. I happen to have worked during President Mandela's time. I went into government 1995, around October, November.
Yes.
And became Secretary of Cabinet during Mandela Deputy Secretary. It was a transitional management.
Yes.
So I was introduced to be deputy to
Yes.
Professor Gerber, and then took over during Mbeki's time as the Director General. And after that, of course, Mbeki was removed, and Motlanthe presidents, I must say presidents, former presidents,
Yes.
was brought in, so I became responsible during his time. And then I was asked, I was supposed to have left earlier, I was asked to assist with managing transition
Yes.
from President Motlanthe to President Zuma. And that ended my role at the end of, once we inaugurated them into office, then I left in June
Okay.
of that year. The paragraph 3, it's all former, so it's just for history. In terms of qualifications, nothing has changed. I'm still
Yes.
where we are.
Yes.
Yes, yes, thank
yeah.
you. And let's then deal, first of all, before we deal with all the other matters that you canvass in your statement, with the very issue of that relates to former DG of GCIS, Mr. Thabo Masako.
Yeah.
Could you just tell the chairperson, without you would recall what happened, just in your own words, as to how did you get to know about the meeting between, or what is it that was reported to you by Mr. Masako?
Yeah, I've known Thabo Masako over history. He's quite younger than me, but
Yes.
he came into the struggle, were part of that, became part of the province of Gauteng government, ended up in the national government as Director General, firstly as Public Works, I think. Then he became Director General GCIS. The way in which we structured government at that stage was that we introduced a forum called a Forum of Directors General, which brought together provincial Directors General and national. And we used to meet about three times a year to manage government. My view was we need a public service that can run irrespective of whether or not the politicians are there. There's something wrong about our concept of public service, that the minister must be responsible for a hospital in the Eastern Cape when you've got managers in the system. And we're creating a system that will make sure that even when you have an election, it shouldn't affect delivery. And so I worked with the Directors General. I chaired that forum. So when Mr. Masako got into this challenge, was faced with this challenge, it wasn't surprising that he asked to talk to me. Now, when you are Director General, you never cease to be Director General. And when you've been Director General in the Presidency, you don't cease to being a leader of the Directors General. So he came to me when I had already left government.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I thought it's important to say that.
Yes.
And he asked for advice. Many Directors General still come to me to ask for advice.
Yes.
And he had been asked to go and meet the Guptas. And he was worried about the implications. At that point, I think there were already indications there were problems. GCIS would have had one of the Guptas in their, international marketing entity, which works with GCIS. And he came to ask me what he should do because the president asked him to see the Guptas. And I said to him, which I normally do, if the president asks you, a minister, to meet somebody, you can't say, I can't meet that person unless there is prima facie evidence that something is going to go wrong. I said, if you don't go, the president might charge you for countermanding him. So if I were you, I would go. So he went. When he came back later, he said to me, well, now I've been there, and they're asking me to do something that's irregular in terms of my portfolio. At that point, I said to him, well, now you have the right to say no, because it's about violating the law, irregular activity. I normally refer to this section, which is not relevant to DGs, but it's for the military, to say you can't take an illegal command. If it's illegal, say no. And so, but also understand that once you say no, you lose your job. And during my time as Director General in the Presidency, most of those Directors General who found themselves in that situation lost their jobs. I think there were about 5 or so during my time. If you have got a problem with a minister or you've got a challenge, the likelihood is that the DG loses the job, not the minister. That's my experience. So when you take the stand, you need to then be conscious that there are consequences for you personally. And so he then decided he's going to take a stand. And when he was now asked to deliver, and that's the sequence of events, it's, the mind tends to compact things within a shorter period, but you realize they happened over a certain period. He then called me and said, I've been given an ultimatum that if I don't deliver, I will not be DG by Wednesday this coming week. It should have been about Friday or, Saturday. And we didn't have too much discussion because it was just information to say I'm now at that point. Although I didn't think it would be so dramatic to say they would tell you, the Guptas would tell you, if you don't do what we want by Wednesday, you won't be a Director General. It hasn't happened like that before. And indeed, by Thursday that week, he called me and said, I'm no more the Director General of GCIS. And at that point, I said, well, Mr. Masako, we now have enough evidence. you know, you are a living evidence of this corrupt activity. This is the time we should then take it on. I didn't know at that stage that they were making plans to move him to public service administration, but he didn't last for too long. And his view at that time is, Reverend, I'm looking for a job now. I don't think I will survive fighting this one. And I have to make sure my children are okay. And that's the pain about corrupt activity, that it costs clean people, it costs them dearly. And at times you get quiet because you don't want to be quiet, but because of the implications. And that's where it died off, because at that point I thought you could then take it on and say, I've got evidence that this matter has happened. Yeah.
So by suggesting to him that this is something that he needed to take on, were you implying that maybe he could go to court and challenge his removal, or what exactly is it that you wanted him to do at that point?
Yeah, if I was asked to do something illegal and I say no, and I'm told by an entity outside government that I won't be in my job by Wednesday, and indeed, I'm not in my job. That tells you that somebody from outside government runs government, and that's a problem for me. And that's why I thought you could save the government by taking a stand. The court, it's a problem because it costs money. And at times people don't go to court because it means you must pay lawyers. And if you are uncertain about your income tomorrow, the likelihood is that you focus more on it. He's not the only one, by the way. I've talked to many people who were in the same situation. If you did take a stand at that point, like some of us did, we paid dearly. And I went without a job when I was supposed to have a job, when I left government, because an intervention was made to make sure that job goes. It was private sector. It had nothing to do with government. But a delegation was sent to London to talk to this international company to say they can't give me that job. If they give me the job, they've lost their business in South Africa. And I didn't get the job. So it's costly to take a stand. And many people would walk away and see how they survive. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, you
yes, thank you,
continue.
Chair. Yes.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but I would rather let me
yes.
allow you to continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And then at page 21 to 22, there is a statement that is prepared there, which was not meant, we did not prepare that one for the Commission because it was it was done earlier in November 2017.
That's page
But what I would like to know, page 21, Reverend, what I'd like to know, what were the circumstances under which you prepared that affidavit, and where did you file it?
That's for the Hawks.
Yes. How did that happen?
Yeah, they knew about this story of Masako, and I imagine he had made a statement, so they came to me to ask whether I could make a statement. I said yes, and they came to my office, and that's how that statement was done.
Yes.
You know, it's the type of statement that you talk to the police and they write it for you, and then you sign it.
Were you ever called to go and testify at court in relation to that matter?
It went dead. Nothing happened afterwards.
Yes. Would you recall who was leading that investigation within the Hawks? Can you recall?
No, I wouldn't. There were 4 of them from the Hawks who came to my office to do the statement. And the person who then, signed here would have been maybe one of them. I don't know. Yes. But I didn't keep a record. My appointment book would calendar would show who it was at that time, but I didn't care to find out, to follow. I mean, they told me who they were, but
Yes.
But I would imagine that when they called you and they themselves would have believed that this was a matter that needed attention, because to them it would have appeared to be had some criminal elements into it.
yeah, I actually thought they were doing what I expected to happen at the beginning, that the police would take on this matter and act accordingly. So I was pleased they came. But then nothing happened after.
Yes.
And it was on the 24th November 2017
2017.
when it was taken, the statement, it seems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that, would your recollection be in accordance with that? Namely that it was taken on the 24th of November 2017. Probably you won't remember the exact date, but does that
Yeah.
sound more or less right?
No, I mean,
Yeah,
I would take it's correct because,
Yes.
I mean, I signed it
Yes.
with the dates on, so it should be correct.
Yeah, it should, yeah. But your recollection would be that it was the end of 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Then we move on. Is that all that you would like to say then on the issue that relates to Mr. Masako?
Yeah, there isn't much more. I think that's why I then refer to what I've written about what I think and understand about what is happening in government. But I wrote before the Masako matter.
Yes.
Yes, but it was quite clear to me
Yes.
that we're on a slippery road
Yes.
and that this country was at risk.
Yes.
And for me, it's more painful because some of us are living, what would I say, bodies of people who paid a heavy price during the apartheid days, detained, tortured, all sorts of things, poisoned. And when you see what you had fought to achieve going down the way it was going, it's a very painful experience. And I always say that I sympathize with the veterans who have been passing away 15 years after 94, because they go with a heavy heart that which we sacrificed for, it's gone. And those who passed away the first 10 years were not celebrated before they left, because it was, we were busy achieving what we sacrificed for. So the Masako matter for me was an indicator that indeed something is radically going wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on the Masako matter, just in relation to the facts, the details. One, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's something that happened at the beginning of February 2011.
Yeah.
That is the actual transfer, his transfer from GCIS to the Department of Public Service and Administration.
Yeah.
The meeting that he has said he had with Mr. Ajay Gupta had happened, I believe, if I recall correctly, sometime during October of 2010. And he had a meeting with Mr. Ajay Gupta at the Gupta residence on a particular day in October 2010, and then later in the same month, he said he had a telephone conversation with, among other people, Mr. Ajay Gupta on a certain Saturday when he was on his way to a golf competition in Northwest with his wife. And Mr. Ajay Gupta, according to Mr. Masako, was insisting that there should be a meet. He should agree that he would meet, I'll simply say, Gupta people. I think it would be people who may have come from the New Age, I'm not sure, or one of their entities to meet them on the Monday morning. And Mr. Masako was saying, no, those people must phone me on Monday, and then we can look at whether I can meet them on that day. But he was insisting that he should agree there and then that they would be meeting. But he says in that telephone conversation, ultimately Mr. Ajay Gupta effectively said to him, I see that you are not cooperating with us, and I will report you to your seniors, and you will be sorted out, or something to that effect. That's towards the end of October. And of course, November, December, and then January, beginning of February, then the transfer happened. But I'm just mentioning this partly to indicate part of his evidence, but also to say it's quite some time back, and therefore maybe one can expect that the recollections of details might not be the same. Now, one of the important or two of the important things which I've picked up from your statement is that it would appear that on your evidence, he, that is Mr. Masako, spoke to you about the president's call to him prior to him going to meet with the Guptas. On the evidence he gave, as I recall, he said he got this call from the president as he was, I think, leaving the building on his way to meet the Guptas, which might not have given him time to meet with you before. But of course, if he spoke to you on the phone rather than meet you, maybe might have spoken to you on the phone on his way to the meeting, I'm not sure. So I'm just drawing attention to that one to say, maybe, I know there's been a long time, just reflect and see whether you think you are quite clear that that happened before the meeting, or it happened after, or whether he just spoke on the phone. But also, quite an important aspect is, from your statement, is that you say that he, Mr. Masako, told you that the Guptas, or Mr. Ajay Gupta, I don't know if he was specific about names to you, but that he had been told that if he did not comply or cooperate, he would not be DG by Wednesday. Yeah. Now, I don't remember that in his evidence he gave that part. My recollection is that what he said was the last time he spoke to Mr. Ajay Gupta on the phone was towards the end of October, when Mr. Gupta said to him he would report him to his seniors and he would be sorted out. And then he says on the day on which he was actually transferred from GCIS to DPSA, which happened to be a day on which Cabinet had a meeting, I think it was a Wednesday, on the 2nd of February 2011, he says on that day, interestingly, he saw a missed call from Mr. Ajay Gupta's phone, but he says he decided not to return the call. But it occurred to him, why is this person phoning me on this day when I'm being transferred in circumstances where he had previously said I would be sorted out? Yeah. But he leaves it at that. So I'm just giving you this because also you might not have listened to his evidence, you might not have read his statements, just to give you what his evidence is, at least as far as I remember, and to check with you whether you feel quite confident that one, he spoke to you before he went to see the Guptas, And two, whether this issue about him saying to you, either Mr. Gupta or the Guptas have said, if I don't cooperate or comply, I won't be DG by Wednesday, whether it's something that's quite clear in your mind, because on the face of it, one would have expected him to remember that part
The detail.
in terms of his evidence. It was quite important. But as far as I remember, he didn't mention it. So I just want you to think about that and see how clear your recollection is about that.
Yeah, Chair, I've got a good example about how the brain works. Because June 16, 1976, the first event was a Volkswagen car of the police burning, and then June 16 happened. I always thought it was a day before, June 16.
Yes, yes.
And I only discovered recently when we did research that it was 2 weeks before. So in a sense, as
Yes.
time goes by,
Yes.
the brain tends to compact
Yes,
things and
yes.
put it within a shorter period.
Yes, yes.
But in
yes.
terms of my interaction with Masako, it's that I was not privy to. It's like a film. The people who watch it know what's happening the other side, but I'm a player in it. I don't know what's happening the other side. So I would say I can't say whether or not he talked to me during the time he was going to the Guptas after the president called him. What I know, and it is possible that they would have had discussions with the president, he would have been asked to go and see the Guptas. I have a sense that he would have talked to me before that, simply because it was a real discussion. It wasn't a telephone call. If you look at the statement
Yes.
I did for the Hawks,
Yes,
which is earlier,
yes.
it's
But on page 21, Chair?
yeah, it says the president requested him to go and meet the Guptas at their house. I advised as
So-
requested.
Actually,
Chairman,
before that,
maybe you
I'm
should-
sorry. Actually, before that, I don't know whether it's actually before, but at the first line of paragraph 3
Yes.
says,
I
you received a call from Mr. Masako
Masako
requesting a
requesting
meeting.
a meeting,
Yes,
seeking advice.
yes.
So
yes.
it must have happened before.
Before, yes.
The one of going to the Guptas and the president calling, it's an operational matter which
Yes.
would have been additional to what
Yes,
was happening. But
yes.
he consulted me when
Before.
he was relaxed
Yes,
and
okay.
wanted to get my opinion.
Yes,
So I
yes.
suspect it happened before.
Before, okay.
And
okay.
then once he had gone to the Guptas, I don't know at what stage, because they talked a lot with the Guptas in between.
Yes, yes.
At what stage?
Yes.
He came back to me and said,
Yes,
this is what they are asking me to do.
yes.
He didn't give me the details. He
Yes.
just said it's irregular, it's against the law.
Yes.
This is what I suspected.
Yes,
And then I said to him, now this is the time.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Then the third must have been during that Friday,
Yes.
Saturday,
Yes,
which I only knew after he gave evidence.
Yes.
I had no idea.
yes,
But the only thing I know is that he called me
yes,
and
yes,
said, I've been told
yes,
that if I don't do what they want me to do
yes,
by Wednesday, so
Yes.
it must be that week,
yes,
which was critical. It
Yes.
might have been months after the first discussion.
yes,
I have no
yes,
idea.
yes, yes,
But
yes,
he said, they say by
Yes.
Wednesday I won't be DG.
yes,
And usually the DG of government communications does the press conference after cabinet on Thursday. And on Thursday, I don't think he did the press.
yeah, no,
Briefing.
I think he was gone.
And he called me to
Yes.
say I'm no more DG.
Yeah,
Whether he called me on the Wednesday after cabinet
or
or
Thursday, yes, but it was after the
Yeah.
decision had been made.
But from my point of view, I remember well, it was too dramatic to forget.
Yes,
Not the
yes.
details about days,
Yes,
etc.,
yes.
but the fact that he talked to me.
Yes,
And it can't be an imaginary thing.
yes,
You know,
yes,
it's something concrete
yes.
that happened.
And the idea that he said he had been told he won't be DG by Wednesday,
Yeah.
that part is also
Very
part of
clear
the
in
drama.
my mind,
Yes,
because that's what shocked me.
yes, yes.
say-
And then it happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you are told by a minister or the president that you won't be DG by Wednesday, I can understand that, because it's in their hands to
Yes,
make the
yeah.
decision.
Yes,
But
yes,
if somebody from outside
Yes.
tells you you won't be DG by Wednesday,
yes, yes.
then there's something seriously irregular. Yeah.
Okay, no,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The paragraph that the chairperson referred to, which is paragraph 3, where did that meeting take place between you and Mr. Masako?
Now, you see, I don't remember. I think it was at my home. I don't remember, because I was not in government at that,
that time,
We couldn't
yes.
have met in
Yes.
the office, so he would either
Yes.
have come to me. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
But the first interaction was not just, it was a call to ask for a meeting, and we met and talked,
Yes, yes,
which is different from all the other things
Yes.
that followed
Yes.
in that regard. Yeah.
okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Then we move on to matters that you categorize as published material on the subject of the commission.
I'm
you-
I'm sorry, Mr.
Sorry,
Norman,
sorry.
just to round off
All right.
on this. So you have say, after he had been to the Guptas and had a meeting with them, and he came back to you, he didn't tell you details of what it is they talked to him about,
Yeah.
or that they wanted him to do. But what he did say to you is that they wanted him to do something irregular.
Yeah.
Is that the position?
Yeah, that's irregular, illegal.
And illegal.
Something he can't,
He could not
if
get.
he did, his
Yes.
integrity would be at stake.
Okay.
In fact,
Yes.
I've said to many public servants, because they are the ones who sign the documents, it's not the politicians.
Yes.
When they ask you to do it, it's
Be careful.
It's your head on the
Yes,
block.
yes,
Because
yes.
in court, it's the person who signed the
Yes.
document.
Yes.
And so it's the official who really gets compromised
Yes.
in this. There's also another thing, Chair, about the public service rules. There's a provision in it that says if a minister asks you to do something irregular, you must ask the minister, because at times something irregular may not be illegal. But you must ask the minister to put it in writing.
In writing, yes.
Yeah, there's a provision.
Yes.
But all the DGs I advised
Yeah.
lost their jobs after asking the minister.
Yes.
So
yes.
it's a provision that's there, but it means that you lose your job. Because once you ask the minister, put it in writing, that's the end of your job. You won't get it in writing.
You know, before Ms. Norman deals with the other
Yeah.
wider issues that you are going to deal with, I am interested in the issue of other directors general that you have mentioned that you know lost their jobs after they refused to do irregular things.
Yeah.
Because I am wondering whether wherever they are, they don't feel that that is something that the Commission should hear about.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, Reverend, we all know many people in this country, and I'm sorry to say this, but that includes you, who suffered a lot in the struggle for freedom, who were prepared to sacrifice a lot of
A lot.
things, who didn't care if they were beaten up by the police, who didn't care if they were detained for years, who didn't care if they could be hanged, and wanted to ensure that there was freedom and that this country could be a better country than it was under apartheid. And they were prepared to operate on the basis that they won't have any income. They won't have flashy cars. They won't have mansions, because they were committed to this particular cause. Now, some of those, and you are not involved in that part, some of those in terms of what one reads over the years, what's in the public domain, have got themselves into serious matters of crime, corruption, and doing things that are very much contrary to serving the people for whom they were prepared to sacrifice so much before. And you think about it, you don't understand how somebody who for so many years was prepared to die just so that the people of South Africa could be free, and because he or she wanted to serve those people, how they could turn around and want actually to steal from the very same people. That's what one reads in the newspapers, in the public domain, in court cases, and so on and so on. So I ask myself the question, when people, and some of them are people who were involved in the struggle, know of things that should be put before this commission, so that this commission, together with the people of South Africa, can try and see what may need to be done to sort things out, to make it a better country. When they don't come forward to say, I know something that will help this commission to consider recommendations that can help our country, when they don't come forward, you have difficulty. But of course, one doesn't want to say anything that may be interpreted to mean that one doesn't appreciate that sometimes people find themselves in a situation where they think about their families. They think about their children. They think about what could happen to them and which could result in them not being able to provide for their families and their children and so on. So one says what one says, but bears that in mind as well. But just one wishes that there could be a way in terms of which people could really come forward and say, look, we really want to go back to that kind of commitment we had before, because this is not the kind of country that we sacrificed so much for. We want it to be what it can be. Now, I'm saying these things to you. You might not be able to say anything, but I'm saying them in the hope that maybe you might be able to throw some light. You can see where my difficulty is. I mean, I think of people who sacrificed in a way that you can't describe in human words for freedom, for a better South Africa. But here we are. There are allegations of state capture. There are high levels of corruption in the country. This commission has been put together to look into those issues and come up with recommendations which could help, and there is still reluctance.
Yeah, Chair, it's a very difficult subject. I mean, it's a subject on its own. I think I've reflected heavily on it in one of the second books, The Things I Couldn't Say. There's a chapter there where I deal partly with this matter.
Yes.
I think firstly, I always say that our struggle produced extraordinary people. You know, the Mandelas, the Sisolos are not products of, are not accidents of history. To fight the system we were fighting, you had to reach a stage where you are ready to lose everything. It was a choice between life and death, really. But put it differently, we had to make a choice about what type of death. You knew you were going to die. So we used to talk about a useless death where you die without not resisting the system.
Yes.
Or die resisting the
Yes.
system. And people made that choice. But that choice was costly. And I don't want to bring family matters here. But there's a stage when I was in detention every 6 months. The family couldn't access my accounts. And in 1982, I think, when Dr. Adget died, I was in the same corridor. Jipale died in the same corridor, John Foster. And then they allowed our families to come and see us. And I signed my powers of attorney to my wife because they couldn't run life. So it means I decided I'm no more useful to the family. And I thank God that she took care of the family. But the sacrifices we had to make were huge. What I'm hearing from comrades I talk to, because I've talked to many, say, no, it's not the same. During that time, when that happened, somebody will take care of the family, even if it's small monies. But, you know, the struggle had support. Today, you are alone. You are on your own. If you lose the job today and there's no food at home,
There's nobody who can help.
Yeah, and the corrupt lot don't want you. They support those who collaborate with them. Those who are not corrupt also don't want you. Because when I left government and I didn't have the job which I had arranged, couldn't serve in boards. Once they see your name, they see risk for their company in relation to government. So you are actually on your own. And I think that's where the challenge
is.
The second part of it, the other side of it, which is more problematic for me, is that not everybody who was in the struggle really was about justice. And I must say, it's in my book as well. Very risky statement to make. Apartheid was just too bad. I mean, it was so bad that you had to fight it in any way. You don't have to be committed to justice. And when you get your chance, you do exactly what they were doing because they were denying you to do it in any way. They excluded you from business. They excluded you from... So you fought to get a chance. But it was not defined in terms of justice. And so I've had a shock myself of comrades who are found doing things that just are despicable. I mean, it's something you wouldn't imagine they would do. But then I realized, no, our commitment was not for the same thing. I think the risk for me, I've talked to a number. They say, if I go now, if I lose my job, what do I do with my children? I've got a bond, I've got this, and nobody cares. I think that's where we are at the point.
That's where the challenge is.
It requires people who would, do what a young theologian who visited Nicaragua and came back because Nicaragua had experienced the same. You are free today and tomorrow you are no more free again. And he talked about being crucified for the second time. You know, that you were crucified. You paid a price. Now you must pay a price again in a new South Africa.
It becomes difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yes.
And it's only people who really call Amadela Gufa.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, who were committed to death and still understand it in the same way.
Yes, yes.
I think that's it.
That's where the challenge is, yes.
So if I make example of those who came clean, wanted to change government, during our days we're transforming government, we're transforming the state. But when the 5 years comes to a close, they realize they haven't achieved as much as they thought, and they're going to be gone after the elections. Then their personalities change. They begin to prepare for the future by looting. And that also tells you the democratic system itself creates a situation where people then reinvent themselves to something else. So it's a subject of concern, and the younger generation is saying, why should we sacrifice? We understand you had to sacrifice, but why should we do it? And I think it's a serious concern for not only this country, by the way, it affects many other countries.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
And so for those DGs, Chair,
Yes,
those who left paid a price and found a space somewhere, they wouldn't want to come back.
yes.
You know, it's,
yes. They want to move on.
They want to move on.
Yes.
But some of us would say, but so what happens to what we fought for and suffered for? I would rather die fighting for it to make sure.
Yes.
And indeed, by 2015,
Yes.
some of us were operating like we're in 1986. I wasn't able to park my car, which in a place where it's not attended to. I can't go to a mall and park my car. And if you started living like that in a new South Africa, then you know that you are in another space. So not many people would want to go back to that.
Yes. And that was about the 5 DGs. Maybe you should consider whether whatever was done to deny you the job that you had got or were about to get, whether it's not connected with what the Commission is looking at, so that if it is, it may be that it's necessary to, if you are prepared to look more into it, but to the extent that it might involve people's names, because I don't think you talked about it in the statement. I don't remember seeing it. It may be necessary that there be a supplementary statement or affidavit that would deal with it, because some of the witnesses who have come before me have made the statement that part of what has been happening is that those who are against wrongdoing were being punished. They would be suspended for no good reason in their jobs. They would be dismissed. They've got to incur legal costs to get their jobs back. They would be charged criminally, and then maybe the prosecution would collapse or the charge would be withdrawn. But they say some of those people who were cooperating with wrongdoing, they would do wrong things and nothing would happen to them. You would do maybe a small mistake and then it's a big thing, but with them, they would do big things and nothing happens to them. So it's important to get as much information and evidence about those things as possible insofar as they fall within the terms of reference. So I'm just mentioning to you that it may be that it does fall within, and if it does, I would be quite interested in it. But to the extent that it might involve people's names, it may be that it's something that might need to be dealt with in a separate statement. But it might be something that you might wish to reflect on, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Chair, it can be done. There are case studies, I would call them case studies of specific cases.
Yes.
It can be done.
It can be done, yes.
In my case, because I went public, I always believe your best protection is go public.
Yes.
So the things that could not be said, first, there's a chapter there at the beginning that deals with the implications of taking that stand. And also including how your children get affected, your brothers and sisters, you know, the family comes to you and says, we are suffering because of you. And you can protect them. If one of my brothers said, you know, I'm part of a consortium, we applied for this, and when they saw a Chikane there, they said to the consortium, if you have that Chikane there, it doesn't matter who it is. You will not get it. And he had to be thrown out of the consortium. So the costs are, you know, it's ripple effect. It goes further than yourself. But yes, I mean, like for instance, this issue about my job, I plan to leave government. I wasn't dismissed. I applied and made arrangement. They asked me to do transitional management for 6-7 months. I had to delay taking that job in January and plan to take it in July to finish with this. And the company agrees. And then during December, they were approached. And by January, I didn't have that job. So, in a sense, you can document these issues. The only difficulty is that for these DGs, some of them, if you say, Minister, put it in writing, that's the end of your relationship. By the time the president appears, it's a negative relationship between a DG, not about that matter. And then you leave because of that negative relationship. So it's not as easy at times as it looks like. But the Masako case was so clear. That's why I thought you could.
Well, as I see it, it's quite important that this commission, when it finishes its job, should try as far as possible to see what can be done about such things. Because going forward, there may be challenges in trying to stop corruption or reduce levels of corruption significantly if the perception created in the country is that if you stand up for what is right, you are gone and nothing will happen. That will be the end of you. Who are we going to have in the future who will stand up? Who will our children have to stand up when we are not there? Because they will look back at what happened to so and so and so and so during our time and say, where did they end up? So I'm not standing up. Who will stand up for our grandchildren when they are grown-ups in this country, when wrong things happen, because people will look back and say, we can tell you as many names as you are prepared to hear of people who tried to stand up and they were finished off, and that was the end of them. So it seems to me that it's quite important that, if at all possible, this commission and the people of South Africa should try and help it to say, what is it that it can recommend that will encourage people who are opposed to wrongdoing, that will encourage those people to stand up, because there'll be proper protection for them. I mean, sometimes it's not just losing a job in the public service, as your experience, you left at the time you decided to leave, but you had made arrangements with your future employer, and then ultimately you didn't get. But I think what one hears in the public domain is that even when you are not employed within the public service, what can happen is that if you are a business person, your businesses might suffer.
It gets affected.
Yeah, if you stand up for what is right. So you end up with everybody who knows something is wrong being afraid to stand up. So the question is, what do we do to strengthen the protection of people who stand up for what is right? I have spoken, and you may have heard, I've spoken in the past about the fact that I would like to look at, and we are looking at that, the question of how has Parliament exercised its oversight obligations over the years. How come we have such high levels of corruption? What have they done to hold to account the executive to make sure that there is not as much corruption in various government departments as we have? Are there challenges with members of Parliament doing their job properly? Are the mechanisms of oversight effective? Maybe the mechanisms are fine. The problem may be the commitment or willingness to go far in exercising oversight on the part of various individual MPs. Maybe also because of our parliamentary system, because to be in Parliament, my name must be in the list of a party. And maybe if I'm going to take a certain line that the party doesn't approve, I'm jeopardizing my chances of continuing to be in Parliament, or of a promotion to be deputy minister, to be minister, to be chair of a committee. If we have all of these things, how do we correct them so that for the future, members of Parliament would be able to exercise their oversight functions properly in the way that they should, and therefore maybe make sure that levels of corruption are reduced significantly, and that those within the executive who are not doing a proper job, are held to account. There are all of those things, and maybe with all of them, there is always the element of fear. If I stand for what is right, there may be consequences, and I'll be alone after that.
Yeah, there were maybe the commission, I'm sure part of the recommendations could go in that direction. But there are two things that you've referred to. It's the electoral system. Everybody now agrees that, not everybody, it's not scientific, most people now agree that our electoral system, the proportional representation was meant to make sure the minorities are represented. That's what it was meant for.
Yes.
But it has tended to be something else,
Yes.
where the party decides whether you are in or out. And therefore you lose your right as a person to be yourself. That's the one thing. But I just want to say another thing is the economic setting in the country.
Yes.
In Noma, I've done, during the time we're in government, I went to visit different governments, the systems, the way they work. In matured democracies where, like in the Nordics, people go to government not because they need money, but they go because they want to serve. They already have money, they've got assets, if you told them to do something, they will tell you, well, I'm leaving, I don't depend on government. I think in poor countries, problem is that those who are poor, who happen to be the ones who fought the struggle, are the ones who have no assets, have no reference point. If something goes wrong, I am gone. And so to deal with the problem, we need to go beyond just fixing the laws and the constitution to fixing the economy.
Yes, yes.
Because as long as if people who go into government are people who are unemployed, have no business, have nothing, no asset, no inheritance from an uncle or father, mother, it's you and you alone. And if it goes wrong, yeah, it has gone wrong. If it goes wrong, you are on your own. I think that it's part of the challenge. So people take advantage of that to say, okay, if you don't do it, we're going to do the following to you. But if you had your own assets, it wouldn't.
Well, this is what sometimes comes to my mind in regard to members of parliament. And I just share with you so you can also comment that if, for argument's sake, we had a constituency system, then if I'm a member of parliament and I'm opposed to wrongdoing, I want to hold to account a minister or the DGs and the president, the deputy president. I believe what is being done is wrong, and I really don't want to be party to this. And I'm a member of my party. If my party was against me doing what is right, but I know that I might not get a promotion to be deputy minister, to be minister or chair of a committee, but my continued presence in parliament depends on my constituency. And I know that my constituency wants me to stand for what is right. I think I would be encouraged to say, it's fine, I might not be minister, I might not be deputy minister, but I'll still be able to look after my family and my children, because I know the constituency that I represent will re-elect me. They are happy with the job I'm doing. So sometimes I look at it that way and say that maybe that would ameliorate the situation of MPs who want to do the right thing, but feel that under the current system, they are too vulnerable because they can be removed by the party and then they'll be gone.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the push now, that we need to do maybe a mixture of what we do at a local government level, where we've got a mixture of proportional constituencies, so that you still take care of the minorities. But have a way in which people can be able to take a stand. And now you are vulnerable.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
I see we have taken quite some time, but I think it was important.
No, it was, Chair.
It
Yes,
was.
thank you.
It's quite important.
Yes.
The Reverend was in government for a long time, and
Yes.
he has been a community activist for a long time. He
Yes.
knows what's happening in South Africa.
No, true.
But we'll take the tea adjournment now.
Yes, Chair.
It's about 1:15, and then we'll resume at past.
Thank you.
We adjourn.
Thank you.
All rise.
more or less?
Yes, may I direct, Chair, around 2007, that appears at page 15.
Or is it about 2007?
2007,
Okay.
and there was, I think Mr. I.J. Gupta was a member of the IMC since 2006.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah, but
Yes.
the earlier first encounter would have been much earlier.
Okay,
And I
okay.
had no idea who
Yes.
these Guptas were
Yes.
all about, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. So then we...
1 second.
I'm sorry, Chair. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. So then we've dealt with that part now. That's just in your books, the two books that you had penned.
Yeah.
You deal with, in chapter 9 of the 9 days in September,
Yeah.
correct? In chapter 9 of that book,
Yeah.
you deal with the conflation of party and state.
Yeah.
And the questions that, some of the questions that the Chair had put to you, they may relate to what happens when there is that conflation of the two institutions, and then what are the consequences
Yeah.
of that. Could you just elaborate on that?
Well, I always, Chair, say that I had an advantage that I became part of the Electoral Commission. So I couldn't be part of the government, 94, and spend time at Harvard studying about governance. So it gave, I always say I had an opportunity that others didn't have. It gave me a break as well after all this. And you could observe when we started, when I went into government, that there was still the old order and the new old order in the same place. And the old order intelligence guys were still reporting to the old order that's outside government. And the new order was also still reporting to their commanders outside government. And when you looked at it, you knew it was a risk for the state because you don't have an intelligence security system that's reporting to the state. It means the state itself was not operating outside. And you can see why that type of thing happened. So I do say that there were signs during our times which we should have read and would have explained this to us. So on the question you are asking, ma'am, I do talk there about the signs.
Yes.
And I'm talking about in paragraph 13 that the
Paragraph 13 is at page 5, Chair. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
The intelligence officers continued reporting. You could say that. And when we dealt with the crisis within the ANC, because I was in the NEC and also Secretary Cabinet and DG in the Presidency, I had a window to all of what was happening. And you could see that by the time we hit Polokwane and the issues of President Zuma, there was within the intelligence system people who reported to they were not reporting to the president only, but reporting elsewhere. And that is a threat to the security of the state. You can't have a state that functions like that. The second issue I refer to here is in paragraph 14, which is the using the powers of the president to stop prosecution. That when I talked with the comrades in government, it was clear that when we were confronted with Mr. Zuma being charged, who was deputy president but then ceased to be deputy president, this language about the state prefers charges against means that the head of state is the one who, it's for the ordinary people, the head of state who's making the decision. And they believe that the head of state can intervene and say, no, don't do it. And if it's people who are at higher levels who believe that, that tells you that we are vulnerable in a sense, and we should have seen the signs and signals The third example I make, it's the Nicholson judgment. You will remember that judgment which was thrown out in Bloemfontein. It was a bad judgment. I didn't have to be a lawyer and my name also appeared there. So to say we were all part of this problem. Cabinet decides to appeal. I'm Secretary of Cabinet. And there were people who were unhappy about the appeal within the leadership of the governing party. And they were of the view that it shouldn't happen. So the first thing they tried was, because I was asked if it's classified information, minutes of cabinet, the Secretary of Cabinet writes an affidavit to confirm this decision was made. So the lawyers needed that. I was told I can't do that because it's my job to do it. Secondly, it's in the minutes. So somebody said, no, but the minutes are not approved yet. You can change them. Now, for any leader to ask Secretary of Cabinet to change minutes of cabinet, it's a very serious matter. And my response, and it's in my book, my response was, the cabinet meets every second week. Those who don't like this decision, you are in the majority. It was after Polokwane. Just go and rescind the decision. You can't ask me to change the minutes. And so they don't rescind it. So I have to do the affidavit for the lawyers. And I was given instructions not to do it. And that's part of the costs I paid, because I said, well, I have to do my job. And President Motlanthe at that time was the president. So I went to him and said, sir, I'm told the leadership says I can't do this affidavit. And you are part of the leadership. And he looked at me and said, Muruti, do the right thing.
And he was not just the president of the country at the time, he was deputy president of the ANC as well.
That's it, yes. So
yes.
For me, if somebody comes and says, the leadership says, I say, well, you are also part of the leadership, so give me the instruction not to do it as president.
Yeah.
And he said, no, do what's right and what the law requires you to do.
Yeah.
And I did that affidavit. And those who know would know that I was accused of being part of those who are against President Zuma because I did that affidavit. It's my job.
Yes,
But that tells you that the law did not matter. What matters, it's interests that people would have.
Well, Ms. Newman,
Yes.
it would be quite fine if it's convenient for the Reverend to read this part of his statement,
yes.
and he can stop
Elaborate.
as and when you might have questions
Yes.
after certain paragraphs,
Yes.
or read, and then at the end questions can come. So, because it's really more about analysis of
what
certain
was happening.
situations. Yes,
That's correct.
yes.
Thank you, Chair. Then may he then start reading from paragraph 17, because what he has just told the Chair appears in paragraph 15.
Yes, no,
yes.
that's fine. Is that fine, Reverend?
Paragraph 16, I say that for me what mattered was the law and the Constitution. Anything else would border on corruption of the law to serve the interests of some members of the party. My compliance with the law cost me dearly within the party, that is the ANC, and as regards my future thereafter. So it's those types of incidences which, as you exercise your responsibility, you seem to be against people when in fact that's not the case.
You know, it's quite an important aspect of your evidence, because as I see things, even though one separates the ruling party from
Yeah.
government, there is a certain reality about certain things. That is why somebody who is a member of parliament, who may have taken an oath that includes, if I'm not mistaken now, that includes putting the interests of the people of South Africa above everything else. In that capacity, I'm not using the actual wording of the oath, but I think there is something along those lines, putting the interests of the people of South Africa or the interests of the country where they might feel that I think what's good for the country is A, but maybe that's not what my party thinks.
Yeah.
What do I do here? Which is what we were talking about earlier. Now, it may be that it becomes relevant to say, to look at how a party that is the governing party might deal with people who it perceives to do things not the way it wants them to deal with certain things. Does it punish people for doing their job? Should that be allowed? The values, the kind of society, the kind of country, the kind of government that the party itself proclaims it wants, is that the kind of situation that it endorses? And if things like that do happen, what does the party do? Or does it leave you like that, even if what's being done to you might be contrary to the values that it proclaims itself, or its own constitution? What does one do? To what extent can one ignore maybe certain practices or certain things that may be done by the ruling party when they affect people who are in government? So I'm just sharing with you thoughts that come to mind from time to time. I don't know if I'm just saying, when I hear you give evidence about this, I'm just concerned, with a situation where the ruling party, your own party, might punish you for doing your job, and to what extent do those types of practices on the part of the ruling party affect corruption, influence corruption, promote corruption? To what extent may they have contributed to state capture, or may they have created an environment which made state capture possible because people who wanted to say stop this, felt they could not say so because they would not get the support of the party, or they could even be punished? Those are some of the thoughts that come to mind, and you might or might not be able to say anything.
Yeah, in a normal, I don't know what is normal society definition. In a normal society and democracy, the party would not act in a way that would intend violating or breaking the law or constitution deliberately in a normal society, unless there are people who are captured there for other purposes. And then, of course, they would behave in a very strange way. And people do make mistakes. I mean, the president would come to the office after Monday. They've been at Litule House or during some earlier time, Shell House, and would come and propose something, you know. But I would see my job as that of firstly protecting the president, making sure we act constitutionally. Fortunately, we had a good lawyer. And I would look at what is being proposed, even if it comes from the party, because the people who propose it are not experts in law or constitution. Then would say to the president, no, Mr. President, we have thought about this. There are serious implications. And the presidents I worked with would then say, is that the case? Yeah, okay, don't do it. You know what I'm talking about, because it's not like a deliberate.
Yes.
It might be just because people feel in a particular way. In this particular case, I make the case that the risk for the state, which is in paragraph 17, if you could allow me to say that, I say
Yes.
in the book,
Yes.
if this level of corruption of the system, because you are corrupting the system, it's not just individuals, had been achieved, it would mean that the integrity of the state would have been totally compromised. And a faction in a party or another entity would effectively have taken control of the state because they run it from outside. And this would be the birth for me of a dictatorship. That's how you end up with a dictatorship and a country controlled by a mafia. You know, there's a time when I had to study the Italian mafia and found it very interesting. You know, they take you from police, the prosecution authority, the political class, and ultimately the judiciary. Once they get the judiciary, then you are all gone, because then they can determine who goes to jail, who doesn't go to jail, and that to me is what defines a state capture in that regard. So a party, a normal party, should not make decisions that suggest you ignore the law. And indeed, when they come to me, I would say, like on corruption, President will make a statement of the ANC or January 8 every year, we are against corruption. So I say, well, that's the position of the party. That's why you won't find me fighting with the party. That's not the issue. The issue is the leadership, who then use their positions to achieve certain objectives. So I will always ask, there's nothing even within a, let alone government, within the ANC that says you should be corrupt. There's nothing. And therefore you can ask me. And if you say the leadership says so, I must, who are these leaders? In which meeting did they make this decision? If you ask that question, it will not be answered.
That's where it ends.
That's where it ends.
Yeah.
That's why, fortunately, I was in the president's office, and the president always is either president of the party or deputy, or so I can go to the president and say, President, this is what they are asking me to do. And I don't think that it would be within official positions of the ANC, and they would say, yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
And therefore take the position. But there aren't many people who would have that, you know, even a relationship with the president where you can engage and say, this is what I believe in. And so if you could allow me, in 18, because it explains this, that in the worst case scenario, the whole of the cabinet and its presidents are compromised, and syndicates operate without any fear because they will not be arrested. At this point, the citizens have lost their government. And I'm quoting in the book because I wrote it before all that you see.
Yes,
You
yes.
could actually predict it. And that since the government now serves the interests of a particular syndicate or mafia and not those of the people. So once it's no more a government of the people, then we don't have a government because it's not serving the interests of the people. And then I add that I continue to say that business too may compromise government, and I do refer in some other parts where with the Browse Mole document, which we're asked to investigate because I chaired the National Security Council committee, and without going to classified information, but we found that there were business people who were targeting specific ministers. And if you have got a good intelligence service, they will know that. That's business people who are trying to corrupt ministers. And you need to deal with that matter because otherwise it compromises the state. And at that time I was asked, well, talk to the relevant ministers. Now it's because I had a relationship with them which is not, it's historical. So
Yes.
I can go to the minister and say,
Yes.
this is the problem. Please watch it. Business people always work on the basis of how they capture the state to serve their interests. Yeah.
Well, I want to say this before you proceed so that I don't forget it. I don't recall whether the ruling party has taken a position officially whether it says it itself had a problem of being captured or of certain important leaders within it being captured or not. I don't know whether it has taken that position. I have no recollection. But I think about it from this angle that where we are looking at the allegations of state capture in this commission, one of the things we are looking at is we must try and establish how it came about, if it did happen, because we have been asked to investigate allegations of state capture. At the end of the work of the commission, I must make findings whether it did happen and so on. But if I find that it did happen, or maybe it might not be the same version as may have been seen elsewhere in the world or whatever, I have to look at how did it come about, what happened, who could have avoided, who could have taken steps to make sure it didn't happen and didn't happen, what should be done in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again. But if, assuming that the ruling party, current ruling party, might still be the ruling party for a long time to come, within government, the state might do whatever it might want to do. If the ruling party was captured, or if important leaders or some of its leaders were captured, and as a result, it itself didn't do what it was supposed to do to try and avoid and stop state capture or stop the levels of corruption that have happened in the country. If it hasn't had that introspection and hasn't taken a stand, it could easily be, there could be a repeat within the party. And if it happens within the party, and if it is still the ruling party at that time, it could happen to the state. So I'm just thinking about that. Of course, you are a senior, leader within the ruling party. So I'm just thinking that, that there is that issue, and I wonder to what extent they may have started looking, or they are in plan looking within inside or not.
Well, I'm no more inside. I'm not part of the
you're no longer
national
in the structures.
executive. Yeah, the national executive. But
Yes.
all the decisions of the party would be against corruption, and therefore, by implication, can allow a state to be captured. The debate, it's what I think it's why you have this commission, because there are those who say the state was not captured. And there will be those who say it was captured. And it's how you show that indeed it was captured. Now, my analysis, which was before the government of the last 10 years or so, which is in my books, was indicating that there is a risk. So the risk was there.
Yes.
It was clear. And it would happen if you don't stop it.
Yes, yes.
The only thing I can say is that now that they declared me that I'm now a veteran, I meet the requirements of 60 years and 40 years of service. We have had a national consultative forum, a consultative conference on this matter, and recommended to the organization that they need to reflect deeply. I don't know, not just in terms of what commissions do,
Yes,
but
yes.
they themselves, because it's their organization. And the documentation is there. I mean, it
Yes.
was a conference before
Yes.
it was before the Nazareth conference,
Yes, yes.
2017, I think. So within there is voices which are saying
Yes, yes.
there's something wrong.
Yes, yes.
That's because this is very simple. If you get compromised, that's how I was trained during the struggle. Doesn't matter whether it's money or your personal life. If the person who compromises you can run your life, can come back and say, we want you to do something. And if you say no, they say, you remember,
Yeah.
you did the following.
Yes.
And
yes.
then you realize the person behaves in a strange way. Now, in the things that could not be said, I've published a document there I sent to the president. Fortunately, it wasn't classified because it was at the party level.
Yes, yes.
So I could publish it and indicated that there are people amongst us who have been compromised in history. It might have happened 20 years ago, and now they become ministers. And the people who know that come to them and say, would like you to do the following. If you don't do it, we'll tell the ANC what you've done. And then, of course, they behave in a strange way. I think that's how a state gets captured. It's more dramatic, of course, where the state is so weak that you could actually take it over and make it do what you want.
Yes, no, thanks.
Yeah.
I think I just want to say in regard to the fact that, as you say, the policies would be clear within the ruling party. We are against corruption and so on and so on. The challenge is not so much to find decisions and policies that says no to corruption. The challenge is to find the will to fight the corruption in deed, rather than what people simply say. I very often say that even with this commission, you'll find lots of people who will publicly pronounce how much they support it. But some of them,
They do the opposite.
Yeah. So even with the ruling party, the challenge will be whether they'll be planning to do something much more than just have on paper that we abhor corruption, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You deal with the matters that the chair raises in paragraph 20 and 21. But could you just summarize, because that's when we were dealing with business people, how business could corrupt those who are in office, and you deal with that in
paragraph.
I beg your pardon, page 8.
I know that I said he could read, but
Yes.
I've been having questions.
Yes, no.
I'm quite happy if he reads up to the end and then deals with questions
Yes.
after.
Thank you, Chair.
If that's going to be convenient.
Yes, Chair.
Is that fine with you, Reverend?
Paragraph
That's fine.
Yes.
Paragraph 20.
Yeah, just read
So
from
go through the.
the article and then questions will come
If
after.
that's
So-
the case, I would go to paragraph 19.
19 first.
Yeah,
Okay.
and say that
Thank you.
in the things that could not be said, I make a point which is concluding this corruption matter.
Yes.
Corruption is devastating. It can compromise leaders to such an extent that they abandon their mission to serve the people and instead serve their own interests or the interests of those who have compromised them or those who know that they have been compromised. I think it's important because once you are compromised, you can't go back. You are captured in a sense. And then in the rereading of the scourge of corruption, I make it clear that we understood the challenge the country was facing before the worst happened. In page 224, I indicate that private sector players, which is what I was referring to, private sector players were always ready with bags of money to compromise the leadership. And I have in bold there were a set of wealthy, highly placed international and national business people who targeted the leadership of or potential future leaders. They didn't just target those who were in power, but potential. If they see you are rising up, they target you. In this regard, the involvement of strategically placed senior comrades gave members of these networks a sense of invisibility. Because if the leadership then gets captured, then you know that nothing would happen to you, whatever you do. And the practice a certain credibility. In practice, a certain credibility. It gives the credit. So what is wrong becomes credible in a sense to do. And of course, I referred here to a warning I gave, paragraph 21, to the governing party based on experience as a deployee of the ANC NEC in the Northwest Province. When I was there, there were young people who were organized to disrupt the meetings, especially if you are about to make a decision that's not in their interest, they will come and disrupt the meeting. You actually realized money was being spent to even get them drink overnight, ready for this type of activity the following day.
To be disruptive.
Sorry?
To be disruptive.
To be disruptive. And I then in 23, I conclude by advancing a view about what is called political corruption, which I say is more toxic than the traditional understanding of bureaucratic corruption, because political corruption gives you space to do what you are supposed to do, whereas bureaucratic, you use the bureaucracy to try to find whatever you would want to achieve. And I reported this because I'm a deployee in Northwest, so I reported this to the NEC. So you'll have documents that indicate that there's a problem within the party, and there are people who are doing these things to achieve their own interest. And for that reason, the law and the regulatory framework falls off. Business people fund these groups so that they can get tenders once so-and-so gets elected. So the problem starts from the ground up into government. By the time these leaders arrive in government, they are already corrupted. And they are there for other purposes than what it's meant to be. That would take you to...
the interface. Yes, there you deal with how ministers ordinarily got appointed, how they got into cabinet. And that's one of the things that we deal with from paragraph 24. Could you just outline the process?
Paragraph 20.
I was just saying at page 10, Reverend, that you deal with how ordinarily we deal with separation of powers, and then you also deal with how ministers get appointed. Maybe you could just, so I take it that when you deal with this process, you deal with it during President Mandela's time, during President Mbeki, during President Motlanthe, during President Zuma. Could you just take chair through that process?
Yeah, unfortunately, with President Zuma, I was with him when he was deputy president. So he was not president.
No,
when he became president, I was out of the system. The point I'm making is that because I was in the NEC, in government, cabinet, I had a window through the system. And I was not involved in appointing ministers, but I understood that when the president appoints a cabinet, and I was the one who got the list before they knew, to be informed to come and meet the president. The president would consult with the Secretary General of the party, because the Secretary General of the party is not appointable. It's the only one who's not appointable. The rest are appointable as ministers, so he wouldn't consult anybody except.
Yes.
But that consultation for me would be this thing about in consultation with and after consultation with, that you consult, but the president has the constitutional responsibility to appoint a minister.
Has the final say.
As the final say. It can't be the party that dictates that. If you are a sworn-in president, you have the final say. Whatever decision you make, you can't blame the party because you have the final say. But the risk is that you have to then balance things up, which are more related to party. You know, there are ministers you appoint because you are balancing, you know, there's a
certain party interests.
Yeah, party issues.
Yeah, party issues. Yeah.
And they could influence the way you, although it's still your decision, but it could influence who you appoint, not based on the service these people would offer, but it might be based on the balances that you need to achieve, which can work. And that's where the deployment policy becomes a problem as well. And I won't have to read it just to explain it, that we managed during my time this deployment policy. If you've got somebody you think can do well, there's nothing wrong. But we advertise the post, and that person must apply. And we'll have a panel.
Like everybody.
Yeah, if they are the best, then they will get the job. But they're not going to get it because they are just coming from the party. Then you impact negatively on the administration, where you have people who may not be able to do the job, and service delivery suffers, etc., and so forth. And so the state is always at risk in terms of the relationship between the state, the party, and the government. But the presidents I worked with, I mean, particularly President Mandela and President Mbeki, it was short with President Motlanthe. It was like 6 months. understood the differences. And so Mbeki would say, I'm now speaking as head of government, not party, not head of state. Or I'm speaking as party. And now I'm speaking as head of state. It's a very important differentiation, so that when you act as head of state, the party could not dictate to you what you need to do, which may not be in the interest of the state or the people of South Africa. Because the interests of one group could work against the interests of the rest of the people of South Africa. And the head of state must be there for the people, not even just for those who voted him in power or her in power, but the head of state must be there for even those who don't like him or her. So the differentiation is very critical, and so I do deal with it in that chapter. I've not taken it, ma'am, paragraph by paragraph, but
yes, but
it's just to make the point.
Yes.
So the risks will always be there. It's how strong the president is, what support he has in a party. But the president can't abdicate responsibility to the party. And this is where the resolutions of Polokwane are very challenging, because they say the center of power is not in the state, it's in the party. And once you say that, it means the president is a figurehead.
The decisions will be taken at the party level. That's what you mean when you say that.
And you implement at government level. My understanding is that the center of power for the party is in the party. The center of power for the state, it's in government there. It's not in a party. And if I dealt with it, party will have a manifesto, and we watch which party is likely to win. We look at the first three, study their manifesto. Once they win, you must translate the manifesto to policy. And it's a technical, professional job. And if you don't handle it carefully, you end up, I don't remember which paragraph, ma'am, about that poverty.
It's in page, you deal with it, paragraph 31. But
31,
page 12,
yes.
but I think you...
Where I make, this example is very interesting, because the party does the manifesto. When they finish, they use the machinery of government when they are in government to translate manifesto to policy, because parties don't have capacity. They may say it's policy, but you know policy has got more detail. You may find that what you thought is good purpose policy, when you go to the details, it doesn't work like that. So you then do that. But in the transition between President Mandela and President Mbeki, we managed that transition in such a way that there was no gap. In the transition between President Motlanthe and President Zuma, because of the decisions in Polokwane, the planning was done at the party headquarters. I was still there because I was handling the project. And I watched, if you read that paragraph 31.
It's at page 12.
Up to page 12, up to page 14. I won't read it, I'll just summarize.
Yes, that's fine, yes.
Where this war on poverty, and research told us poverty in urban areas is becoming deeper, even compared or worse than rural areas, because the poor people who are unemployed, the farming doesn't work, they end up in the city. And then there's deep poverty. So we developed a policy on war on poverty for rural and urban. And when I hear this debate in Alexandra about urban renewal, and they say, what happened to the money? I say, they should ask us, because we planned for that. But when the takeover in 2009 happened, the good comrades who were really thinking very well thought poverty is a rural matter. So they moved war on poverty from the president's office, which we said it must be at the center because it deals with every department. They moved it to rural development. So because when I left government, I used this policy, I believed it works. Get society to be involved with government, civil society, the multi-party, everybody. Then we found that it has been moved from the presidency to rural development. I went to rural development, and the DDG then didn't know what to do with this, because what does it do with urban renewal in Alexandra or Soweto? And then 6 months later, they redeployed all that staff from the president's office who went to rural development to do rural work. And suddenly there was nothing.
And the townships and Alexandra then fall outside of their program now.
Yes, and it tells you that if you don't manage the relationship between the party and the state, you are likely to make very disastrous mistakes that are not intentional, but just happen because of the way in which you handle this relationship. That relationship can lead to corrupting the system if it's not managed properly. And I think that explains that section.
So money that might have been intended for both rural and urban might have ended up working only for rural.
But it would have been better if it did, but I don't think that money ended up there. I think that's part of the problem.
Yes.
That's why in Alexandra they are debating where did the money go to.
Yeah.
And nobody is answering this question. But
Yes.
if they asked us who were
Yes.
there,
Yes.
I will be able to tell them
Yes.
the renewal happened this far,
Yes.
and something happened,
Yes.
and then nobody now knows where. I'm just making an example.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's critical to have manage the relationship in a way that respects the Constitution, because it's our Constitution, it's not somebody's Constitution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you deal, Reverend, with the war on poverty right up to paragraph 35.
Yes.
You've summarized it well, unless there is a particular point that you wish to highlight in those paragraphs, but I think you've covered the gist of what you wanted to convey to the chairperson there.
I do conclude there that as a result, and notwithstanding available information, that poverty had become deeper in some of the major cities in the country. That's 34.
Yes.
Paragraph 34.
34, yes.
The war on poverty program was moved to the Department of Rural Development. This cut off the urban renewal development part of the program.
Okay. Thank you.
And may not be obvious, but the failures in the townships becomes part of the problem. And people would not even remember that you had a problem like that. And
Yes.
and I go through them in terms of the issue about giving the one poverty pilot study in Soweto, which is the one that we were doing.
Yes.
This program suffered, and suddenly the agreement signed with the department, the government failed in the process. That takes you to 35.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we've already dealt with the Gupta matter and how you met them.
Yeah, we've dealt
yes,
with that.
we've dealt with that. But then there is, and you also dealt with the Masako matter, but I think there are paragraphs which I think you might want to place on record, because they deal with sort of the summation of what you've observed insofar as this whole Gupta family issue is concerned.
Yeah.
And if I may take you there to page 18,
Yeah.
because I believe you have observed the proceedings of the commission at some point, and because you summarize it. and you deal with it at paragraph 47, but please tell me if you want to go.
Yeah, for record, I can do
I
that.
think
Maybe,
47
yeah.
does,
I
yes.
say with evidence that has come to the attention of this commission and the public, I am now, which I have said earlier, I'm now convinced that the Gupta family was not an accident of history. You know, my observations. The effort to reach out to me and many others directly or through family members suggests that there was a more intelligent operation to reach out to leaders who were strategically placed or had the potential to occupy strategic positions in the future, or their relatives, including their children, and create relationships or corrupt them in preparation for a larger project to capture the state and use it for personal gain or for the benefit of those who collaborated with them. And in 48, I say, if such an intelligent operation was in place, I would have been surprised if our national intelligence services would have missed it. I know I've worked with them. They should have known. If they didn't, I would say that we had no intelligence services. That would be the implication, and that's very vulnerable as a country. If anything like this would happen over such a long period and you miss it, then you are very vulnerable as a nation. My expectation is that the intelligence agencies must have had this information, except that it would be within the realm of classified information. Public information we have now is that 2 key senior intelligence officers did report this matter to the president, but it did cost them their jobs. That's my information, and it's public information. For the purposes of this commission, there should be a legal way in which this could be confirmed, because it's very important in terms of,
Yes.
did we have a knowledge of
Yeah.
what is happening?
Yes.
And I would be surprised.
Yeah.
I worked with these teams in intelligence. There are weaknesses,
Yes.
but they wouldn't have missed something like this.
Well, there are going to be witnesses who will testify before this commission in due course, probably before the end of the year, who previously occupied senior positions within the intelligence. And I have reason to believe that they will throw some light on these issues. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you. That's the end of the statement, and we've touched on the chapters in your book as you were summarizing. Is there any particular aspect that you would like to highlight, which you might feel that maybe I have omitted, which you would want to mention to Chair, which is perhaps contained in your references?
Yeah. I picked up the references, Chair, from the book, because it's quite, they're elaborate.
Yes.
By the way, the first book, 8 days in September, cost me dearly as well. So
Yes. Well, is it the job that you told me about only, or there is much more?
yeah, I think there's much more about
There's
the
much
job
more.
and other things, but
Yes.
in terms of just writing the story,
Yes.
was not welcome.
Yes.
Because and as I'm saying, I was very careful. If you read my books carefully, it's not about the party. It's about leadership. And if you get leadership, if the leadership gets compromised, then of course the party becomes a victim. So I don't have more to say. I just extracted some of the elements.
Yes.
The details are in the
book.
Which I mean, we could spend more time on them, but I didn't think that it would help the commission. It should suffice now to say that I think although we saw the signals, the state and party were not able to arrest it, because we could have arrested this process. And it wasn't, and it cost the country dearly. And something needs to be done to make sure we never, ever end up in that space.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and I didn't talk about here because the VBS, it's a recent thing. I actually looked at it. I talked to Mutau, who did this report, and it became clear to me, same problem. The leadership, whoever this leadership is, says we're going to change the law so you can put money there. But they don't change the law. But they put the money in anyway. And the DGs sign the documents. And I say, before you sign any document, you say, now, which laws are affected? Before I sign anything, which laws are affected? Have you met this requirement, that requirement? And if they did that, none of the money of the local government would have been put in the VBS bank in terms of the law, because they had not changed it. But people don't, if the leadership, whoever this leadership is, says we're going to change the law so you can put money there, I would wait and say, where's the law?
Yes, where's the change in the law
Yeah, where's
first?
the change in the law before
Yes.
you risk people's money?
Yes,
And that was not done because there's no respect for the law.
yes, yes.
People think they can run government without worrying about the law. And that's
Yes.
a pitfall that would destroy our future.
Yes,
And the sooner, we've got the laws. It's not like they are not there.
yes,
It's the disregard, and if you are compromised, you can't even raise the question. Yeah, that's all I would like to say.
Thank you.
well, I think one has heard of situations where people have said when something illegal or irregular was about to happen, and a leader said it must be done, and somebody said no, but it will be against the law. One has had situations where it is said, some leaders would say, don't tell me about the law.
Yeah,
This must be done.
yeah.
So it's a serious situation when any leader says, don't tell me about the law. You know, if you have that situation and it's confirmed as true, it would be a serious situation. But one has had stories in the public domain and elsewhere. But of course, even when that doesn't happen, so often people know what the law is. People know what is right. People know what is wrong. But they do what's not right, or they're instructed to do what's wrong, and they do it. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just to authenticate copies that were made out of the references that you made, Reverend, in your book, if you could just turn to the divider marked 1.3.
1.3.
Yes. That will start from page 23. That's the extract from the 8 days in September.
Yeah.
Yes, and those are the extracts from your book. I just want to authenticate it. And then those, and then also from things that could not be said, that will start from page 50.
Yeah.
Yes, and of course, the chair has been favored with the actual copies of the books. They have been placed before the chairperson, yes.
I didn't know whether we the commission bought these, or whether we...
Yes, Chair.
Oh,
They were bought
okay.
by the Commission.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Chair.
No, yes, thank you.
Yes.
So
Thank
certainly I have been reading some portions ahead of today, but the one on 8 days in September, I read it some years back. I can't claim to have read the whole of it, but I read, I think, a substantial part of it. Yes.
Yeah, I looked at the attachments.
Yes.
I've got the books in my bag, but they look authentic.
Yes.
They look very authentic. It can be compared.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
No.
That is the evidence
Thank
from
you.
this witness.
Reverend,
Yes.
thank you very much
Yes.
once again for having come to give evidence and to share with the Commission your perspectives and observations on some of the matters falling within the terms of reference of the Commission and some of the things that happen in our country, and for your views. We appreciate it very much. Once again, thank you very much. And you are excused.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We have the next witness, Chair. Still, unless you would prefer that we adjourn.
How much time do we need to start with the new witness?
No, that witness should not be a long witness at all.
Yeah, I mean, to start, how much break do you need?
Or to start with that witness? No, Chair. If Chair says we could take the lunch now, then we could start at it's 1:45. I'm not sure whether I'm following the question.
Well, I was
Yes.
thinking whether you need 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Or just to set up for that witness. Oh, yes, Chair.
And then maybe we
yes,
can use
5 minutes.
We can use 15 minutes before we take the lunch break.
Yes, Chair.
Is that all right?
That's all right. Yes.
So 5 minutes would be fine?
5 minutes, Chair. Yes.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
we
you, Chair.
will adjourn then for 5 minutes.
Thank
We
you.
adjourn.
Thank you.
All right.
to say statement containing Mr. Jonas's, the file containing
No.
Mr. Jonas' statement, and yet it's not about
Yes.
him. It's going to be difficult to change it. Huh?
No, Chair, it can be changed because we had put in Mr. Jonas's for reference purposes. So that can be, we can simply take that one out, and then what is number 2 will be number 1. It will be easy.
Oh.
Yeah, it will be easy to change the index. That can be done with ease, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll say the file containing the notice of motion and affidavit of Major General Zintle Lutricia Nonopi will be marked as Exhibit D9.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, might I ask for a slight amendment to that, Chair?
Yeah.
That we term it Exhibit D9B, that of Lieutenant General Matakata.
Just repeat that, I'm sorry.
Chair?
Just repeat what you have just said.
That Chair, instead of Chair naming it General Mnonopi, that Chair names it as the Exhibit D9 to be the statement of General Matakata.
Yes, no, I
Yes.
think.
Yes, Chair, Chair mentioned
Yeah.
Mnonopi, yes.
Okay, I think it comes from the fact that her statement is not at the top.
Yes, yes.
You see, if it's at the top, that makes it easy.
Yes.
But also, this might not be the only file where there is a statement by her, because there might be another one that has a statement from which you got this.
Yes, Chair, but
Yeah.
yes.
The file marked Yolisa Mtakata, containing, among others, an affidavit by Ms. Yolisa Mtakata, will be marked as Exhibit D9.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. Thank you,
I
Chair.
think just for the future, if
We'll just remove
the
it.
first statement
Should be
would be
hers.
that of the witness who
Yes.
is giving evidence then, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
We'll rectify that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. May the witness be sworn in?
Yes, thank you.
Please state your full names for the record.
I'm Yolisa Matakata.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you gave will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes,
Thank you. Lieutenant General, is it correct that you are currently in the employ of the South African Police Services and you're holding the position of Lieutenant General?
Yes, that is true.
Yes. Could you please just look at the file that is in front of you and turn to page 35 of that file? It is 2 pages, 35 and 36, and do you see there's a signature at page 36?
Yes, I can say that.
Yes. Is that your signature?
That is my signature.
Did you depose to that affidavit on the 22nd of August 2018?
Yes, I did, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And then could you please turn to page 84, 84. There is a signature at page 85. It's also a 2-page statement.
Yes,
Affidavit, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Did you depose to that affidavit on the 18th of November 2019, which is yesterday?
yes, I did, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Now, After you had this statement of yours, it is common cause that it served before the chairperson as C1 because it was attached to General Mnonopi's statement. But in your statement, you deal with a telephonic conversation between General Ntlameza and the former minister, Mcebisi Jonas. Could you just tell the chairperson, where are you based within the police service?
Thank you, Chair. I am based at the Directorate for Prior Crime Investigation, which is located at Silverton. It is the head office of the DPCI, as it is referred to.
Yes. And what is do you have, as a Lieutenant General, is there a specific position that you hold within that department?
Thank you. I'm a Lieutenant General in terms of the rank of the police, and in the DPCI, I am the Deputy National Head.
Yes. And what sort of matters get referred to your section?
In the Directorate for Prior Crime Investigation, we investigate corruption-related matters, commercial crime-related matters, and also organized crime matters.
Yes. How long have you been within that section?
I am 9 years within the Directorate now.
Yes, within that directorate. Yes. And if you could turn to page 35, because that's where your first statement is.
I am.
Yes. You say you can't recall a date when there was this conversation. You were at General Ntlemeza's office. Could you just tell the chair in your own words what happened at that meeting and your recollection of the events?
Okay, Chair, I was in a meeting in General Ntlemeza's office, and with me was General Ntlemeza and General Mnonopi. There were two meetings, but I will first refer to the first one. In the first meeting, it is where General Mnonopi raised the concern with General Ntlemeza that she has been trying to get hold of the Deputy Minister, then Mr. Jonas, for him to depose an affidavit in relation to an investigation that was within her environment. And she requested General Ntlemeza to intervene and maybe try and get hold of the Deputy Minister himself. On being informed about that, General Ntlemeza immediately called the Deputy Minister, who responded immediately to the call. General Ntlemeza indicated to him that General Mnonopi, who has been assigned to this matter, is really looking for him and is raising a concern that she's been trying to get hold of him to depose an affidavit. The Deputy Minister then asked, "What do you want from me as the Hawks? Because I'm not a witness, I'm not a complainant, I didn't open a case, and therefore I'm not going to give a statement." So General Ntlemeza had to explain that there are two cases that have been opened by Mr. Mania from the DA and Mr. Bloom from the COPE. And these are related to his, interview in the media about being at the Gupta household. And therefore, this is why he is looking for him, and he is a witness to that effect.
Yes. And then how did that conversation end?
He agreed that he will meet with the general, but subsequently, if I may continue.
Yes.
Before the subsequently, you were not on the phone with Mr. Jonas, General Ntlemeza was.
Yes, Chair.
How come you heard what they were saying? Were they speaking on this? Did Mr. Ntlemeza put the phone on speaker?
Yes, Chair. What happened was General Ntlemeza put him on the speaker, and therefore that is how I could hear the whole conversation and also what would be Mr. Jonas's response to the issues raised by General Ntlemeza.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And then you say, could you continue? You were going to continue.
Yes.
And Chair asked you the question. Yes.
I then would like to refer, because this was the first call that was made by General Lemeza.
Yes.
Then I'm not sure, and I can't recall after this call, when did General Nonopi?
I'm sorry again, I just want to be sure. In summary, was the conversation between General Lemeza and Mr. Jonas to the effect that General Lemeza said to Mr. Jonas, General Nonopi, who has been assigned to this investigation, has been looking for you, and then General Lemeza wanted to see what could be done to make sure he was available to meet with General Nonopi. Is that what the gist of what he was saying to him was?
Yes, that is the gist. What General Lemeza was doing was to just indicate the frustration, if I may refer to that, by General Nonopi, of not getting hold of the Deputy Minister to meet and get a statement from him. So therefore, General Lemeza was intervening in that regard and indicating to him that he has to meet with them and explaining after the Deputy Minister wanted to know, but why must he meet? That he's not a witness, he's not a complainant in the matter, so why must he give a statement? That was the gist of the conversation.
And the gist of how the call ended was what I know that you were asked this. Just repeat that, please.
Yes. The Deputy Minister didn't object when he was informed that General Nonopi is the person and has been looking for him, for him to submit this statement to her. So he didn't object. He said, no, it's fine.
Did the conversation end simply like that, or did they talk about the way forward? What would then happen for General Nonopi and Mr. Jonas to meet?
No, there were no discussions further on that particular day when this first call was made in my presence.
Okay.
That how would they meet and when? There was no such.
It was just left on the basis
that he had
the Deputy Minister was saying it's okay. In other words, he was agreeing to meet with General Nonopi.
Yes. That is true, Chair.
That's how you understood
Yes.
it? Okay, all right, continue.
Thank you. And then was there a second conversation?
There was a second call that was made some time after, which I cannot recall how long after the first call. But again, we were in a meeting, and after the meeting, General Nonopi raised the concern again and frustration that she has tried, even after the first call that was made in my presence, to get hold of the Deputy Minister, and he is not taking the calls. And it sent messages to him. Then General Lemeza again took the phone immediately, his phone, and he called the Deputy Minister, who responded immediately to the call. And again, he indicated, look, General Nonopi is concerned and frustrated because he's been looking for you, and to take the statement that we had referred to earlier in the first instance that I was present when he mentioned this call. So the Deputy Minister said, no, it's fine. And he indicated that you must come to the office and you would be meeting with General Matagata and General Nonopi, where they can have the statement taken from you.
Yes, and then did the Deputy Minister come?
Then
Is that how that telephone conversation ended?
Yes, that is how it ended. He agreed that he will come and the statement to be taken from the office.
So was the arrangement in that telephone conversation that the minister would come to the offices of the Hawks?
That was how it was arranged, Chair, that he will come to the offices
Yes.
of the Hawks.
Was a date arranged during that conversation?
There was no date arranged, Chair.
Yeah.
And it would be my assumption that General Nonopi would have had a follow-up with him to make the necessary arrangements of the date
Yes.
when to meet.
Yes. During that second telephone conversation which you witnessed, did the Deputy Minister indicate why it was that General Mnonopi may have experienced difficulties in getting hold of him?
No, there was no such,
There was no
such
discussion
was
like that.
raised, yes.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
Thank you, Chair. And then, so did you ever, because now you had been, the General Ntemeza indicated that the Deputy Minister would meet with yourself and General Mnonopi. Did you yourself make any attempts to reach the Deputy Minister to have a meeting with him, or did you, how did that work out?
No, I didn't, because it was not my investigation as such, because it was already mentioned that General Mnonopi is the person and that would be making the contact with the Deputy Minister. So mine was to wait for a date from General Mnonopi that is confirmed that we will be meeting with the Deputy Minister.
Yes. So did that meeting take place?
It never took place, Chair.
Yes. Thank you. And then at page 37.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
The fact that you were going to meet the Deputy Minister with General Mnonopi, was there a particular reason why you were added, or is it normal that there would be two officers dealing with an investigation?
Chair, I think at the time, maybe General Ntemeza just wanted to demonstrate, because being a Deputy Minister, there would be two senior people that would be meeting with him. The mere fact that even the matter was handled by General Mnonopi, not maybe junior members. I think it was just courtesy and showing respect at the time. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Chair, the time is now 1 o'clock. I'm not sure whether Chair would like or would like us to finish this witness.
I was thinking maybe we should go up to 10 past or quarter past. What do you think?
Yes, Chair. Maybe we may do that.
Okay,
Thank
let's
you, Chair.
do that, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Then, General, at page 37, I'm sorry, there is a letter that is signed by yourself, but you signed it on behalf of General Ntemeza. Could you just turn to page 38? Is that correct? Is that your signature?
Yes, that's my signature, Chair.
And that letter is dated?
The letter is dated.
I'm sorry, you talk about a letter, and are you talking about page 87?
37, I beg your pardon. 37, 37.
37.
37, yes.
No.
And the signature is on 38.
You sticking to the red numbers, eh?
You to the right numbers, that is correct, Chair.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I've seen it now.
Have you found it, Chair? Thank you. First of all, did you write this letter or did you simply sign it?
No, I signed the letter. It was not returned by me.
Yes. And why did you end up signing it and not the person who was the author of the letter?
Was called by General Ntemeza, Chair, and requested me that I sign a letter on his behalf that he would have signed, but he was not in the office at the time. So he requested me to sign the letter on his behalf. He's aware of the contents and the letter.
Yes. What was this letter all about? I see it is addressed to the Speaker, House of Assembly, Parliament, Cape Town, and addressed to Honorable Ms. Mbeki. What was the letter about?
The letter was a request to the Speaker of Parliament, Ms. Mbeki at the time, to intervene due to the non-cooperation of the Deputy Minister in the investigation that the Hawks were busy investigating at the time, after it has been arranged several times to get a statement from him. So the request was for the Speaker of Parliament to intervene, because there's not been any positive response from the Deputy Minister at the time.
Yes. And I see there is reference in paragraph 4 of that letter that there was a letter or communique that had been addressed to the Minister. Are you aware of that on the 6th of March, 2017?
Sorry, is it paragraph?
Paragraph 4 of that letter at page 37.
Okay. Yes, I'm not aware of the letter because I was not part of the investigations, Chair, but it is obvious that there is correspondence to that effect and as evidence in the docket of the investigators.
Yes. General, this affidavit, together with the letter on the instructions of the chair, was given to Mr. Jonas recently for him to comment on what you stated, and his comment appears, Chair, at page 75. But what is relevant for the purposes of this session, Chair, because in that response he deals largely with what happened between him and General Mnonopi and General Ntlemeza. But where he deals with General Matakata, Chair would find at page 79, paragraph 23.
Yes.
And this, if I may read the paragraph, he says, turning to the affidavit of Lieutenant General Matakata, she claims that she was in General Ntlemeza's office when he called me on 2 occasions. I was never told that she was a participant in any of these calls. That seems, you have read that affidavit, it was given to you as well for you to read, and you responded yesterday to that paragraph, I would imagine, and your response appears at pages 84 and 85. And then what do you say in that short paragraph, in that short affidavit, in your response?
May I read the whole?
Yes, you'll just start from paragraph 3.
Okay. Thanks. The purpose of this affidavit is in compliance with a request from the Commission's investigating team to reply to Mr. Mcebisi Jonas's response to my supporting affidavit dated 22nd August 2018 to corroborate the affidavit of General Mnonopi, who was served with a notice in terms of Rule 3.3 of the Commission's rules. In paragraph 4, my supporting affidavit is set out above, was limited in particular to corroborate General Mnonopi's assertion to deny the idea of dissuading Mr. Mcebisi Jonas from making a formal statement to the Hawks regarding an offer of Cabinet Minister as Minister of Finance by the Gupta family. Reference is made here with paragraph 3, read with paragraph 4 of General Mnonopi's affidavit attached herewith as Annexure AA1. From the response in paragraph 5, from the response of Mr. Mcebisi Jonas's affidavit, there is no indication to the effect that he is in dispute with my supporting affidavit, except for refuting that he took an undertaking to come to our offices to provide statement as outlined in paragraph 5 of my supporting affidavit annexed here with AA2. And paragraph 5.1, in regard to his denial set above, I stand by paragraph 5 of my supplementary affidavit.
Yes. Can I just find out from you, General, when the meeting actually took place, because Mr. Jonas has testified about a meeting taking place between him and his lawyers and General Mnonopi. Were you present?
No, I was not present, Chair.
So in other words, you would not know what transpired at that meeting?
No, I wouldn't have.
Yes. Thank you. Chair, that is all from this witness.
Yes. So, but basically it's about the 2 telephone calls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
that's all, Chair.
And that's all, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fine. If you have no further questions, I'm happy to excuse the Lieutenant General.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General, for coming to give evidence. If we need you again, we'll ask you to come back. But thank you very much, and you are excused.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Those were the witnesses for today.
today?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We are going to adjourn for the day. We will not have a hearing tomorrow, but we will have a hearing on Thursday,
That is correct.
when we'll hear the evidence of Minister Nkwane
Nkwane
Mashabane, who was Minister of International Relations at the time of, I think, Waterkloof landing, the Waterkloof landing, who will give evidence about the promotion of Mr.
Kolwane.
Nkolwane
Yes.
to the position of ambassador.
Yes, Chair.
That will be on Thursday. For today, we stop here and we adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.
All rise.